Have you ever heard your own daughter call you a failure right in front of a room full of people? On the happiest day of her life, I did. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 67, and I had always believed that my daughter, Claire, respected me. That illusion shattered the moment I attended her wedding. I had imagined walking into the grand hall, seeing her radiant smile, feeling proud of the woman she had become. Instead, I caught her whispering to her soon-to-be mother-in-law, "She's just a failure, nothing like you." Time seemed to stop. The music, the chatter, the clinking of glasses all faded into silence in my ears. I remembered the little things, the vintage wedding dress I had preserved for 35 years, the long nights I had spent making sure Claire had opportunities I never had, the 30 years I dedicated to running our small-town library. All of it seemed invisible, as if the effort and love of a lifetime were meaningless in her eyes. I felt a jolt of disbelief mixed with hurt so sharp it almost took my breath away. How could my own daughter dismiss a lifetime of sacrifices in a single whispered sentence? The sting was compounded by the sparkling world around me. Women draped in diamonds, designer gowns that outshone anything I owned, and an air of effortless privilege that made my modest navy dress feel almost absurd. I was there visible but unseen, a mother rendered small by the ambition and vanity of her child. But I wasn't entirely defenseless. Nestled safely in my purse was something Claire could never anticipate: a letter from my late husband Mark, written just weeks before his death. He had sensed changes in Claire's behavior in his final months, and he had left me instructions. If she ever treated me unfairly, I was to read this letter aloud to remind both of us of what truly mattered. It was a lifeline I had never imagined I would need. Standing there surrounded by the shimmer of wealth and the chatter of celebration, a spark ignited inside me. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a turning point. I would not remain silent. I would not shrink into the shadows or let my voice be muted by wealth arrogance or the cruelty of someone I loved. I had the words of my husband, the strength of my own experience, and the quiet conviction that I deserved respect. In that moment, I made a choice. I would speak up and I would claim my place not just at the wedding, but in my own life. Claire had dreamed about this wedding since she was 12. In her imagination, it was always a grand affair, a sprawling mansion with manicured gardens, a 12-piece orchestra filling the air with music, 200 guests dressed to impress, and enough flowers to fill a florist's entire shop. The family she was marrying into the Ashers had wealth stretching back generations, a lineage steeped in privilege, influence, and carefully cultivated social standing. From the moment I arrived, I felt the contrast between her world and mine. I had chosen a navy dress for the occasion, simple yet elegant, not a designer gown, but one I thought appropriate for a mother of the bride. As I walked into the reception hall, however, I immediately felt the difference. The other women shimmered in gowns worth months of rent, their jewelry sparkling like miniature chandeliers. There was a kind of effortless confidence about them, the kind that comes from never worrying about money or status. Standing among them, I felt small, not invisible, but diminished. Claire, in what I assumed was a sentimental gesture, wore my vintage wedding dress, the one I had preserved for 35 years. I thought it was touching that she wanted to honor the past to keep a piece of our family's history alive on her wedding day. I was naive to read it that way. Later, during a brief moment away from the crowd, I overheard her speaking to her mother-in-law. The words cut deeper than any knife. "She's just a failure, nothing like you. She hasn't accomplished anything worthwhile." The approving nod from the Ashers only made the insult sting more sharply. In that instant, the carefully constructed illusions I had held about Claire, about my role in her life, and about the respect she supposedly had for me, began to crumble. I reached instinctively for the letter from Mark tucked safely in my purse. Weeks before he passed, he had written it to warn me to protect me from the very behavior I was witnessing. He had noticed Claire's questions about our finances, her subtle investigations into my future care, and even her research into Meadowbrook Manor, a private senior facility that promised to manage assets and provide long-term care. As the words from that conversation replayed in my mind, a harsh realization settled over me. Claire's concern wasn't rooted in love or care. She was calculating, thinking ahead to how my age and needs might affect her inheritance, seeing me not as a mother to cherish, but as a potential liability. The daughter I thought I knew, the one who had cried on my shoulder during difficult times and leaned on me for guidance, seemed replaced by someone cautious, ambitious, and strategically focused on her own gain. It was painful to acknowledge, but I understood the truth. This wasn't just carelessness or youthful arrogance, it was deliberate. Claire was planning, and I was the obstacle she wanted to manage. That realization brought with it a strange mix of heartbreak and clarity. The wedding, with all its grandeur and beauty, suddenly felt like a stage where I was both participant and witness, forced to confront the true nature of my daughter's intentions, while surrounded by a world that seemed intent on reminding me how out of place I was. After the wedding, I returned to Hartford with a heavy heart but a clear purpose. I realized that to protect myself, I couldn't rely on assumptions or hope that Claire's intentions were benign. I needed facts, and I needed support. I went to the library where I had spent 30 years of my life, a place that had always been my refuge and my proving ground. There, I enlisted the help of my longtime friend, Margaret, who had always shared my passion for research and a healthy skepticism of polished appearances. Together, we began to dig into Meadowbrook Manor, the facility Claire had mentioned. What we uncovered was alarming. Meadowbrook had a history of investigations for aggressive marketing tactics aimed at elderly residents, pressuring them to sign over assets in exchange for care packages that often fell short of promises. Numerous families had complained about feeling rushed, manipulated, or misled during emotionally vulnerable periods. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became. This wasn't about my safety or well-being. Claire's focus wasn't my care, it was my finances. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to approach this with anger or hysteria. I would confront Claire and her family with calm authority, armed with truth and evidence. Knowledge had always been my strength, whether balancing the library budget or mediating between difficult patrons, and I intended to use it now. I arranged a meeting at Claire and her husband Michael's home. The air was tense before it even began, polite smiles, hiding the unspoken undercurrents of power and expectation. I sat down, pulled out Mark's letter, and began to read aloud. His careful observations of Claire's behavior, her questions about my finances, and her research into Meadowbrook Manor filled the room with a silence heavier than any music or applause could create. I laid out the documents Margaret and I had compiled, showing the complaints, the state investigations, and the unsettling patterns of pressure on vulnerable seniors. At first, Claire, Michael, and Patricia, her mother-in-law, attempted to justify themselves. "We're just concerned for you," Mom Claire said, her voice laced with practiced warmth. I met her eyes steadily. "True care," I said, keeping my voice calm but firm, "is respecting my choices, not turning me into a liability to be managed." The room stiffened. Patricia's elegant composure faltered for a moment, and Michael glanced down at the papers I had laid out, absorbing details he hadn't expected to see. I continued explaining how I had researched the facility independently, how I understood my finances, my health, and my capabilities. I showed them that I was capable, informed, and fully aware of my options. Claire's confident, polished facade began to crack. She had always controlled situations with her charm and precision, but for the first time, she was silent, caught off guard. Her usual quick wit and rehearsed expressions were no match for calm, well-documented truth. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of the daughter I had known, the scared human side beneath the social ambitions and meticulous planning. I did not shout. I did not accuse. I presented facts, spoke from experience, and asserted my right to autonomy. And in that charged, silent space, the power dynamics shifted. It was no longer about wealth influence or appearances. It was about me, Evelyn Harper, a woman with a lifetime of experience and the right to make her own choices, standing her ground with clarity, dignity, and undeniable authority. That difficult conversation opened a door I never expected. For the first time, Claire admitted the truth. She was scared. Scared of me aging, scared of not knowing how to care for her mother, scared of being unprepared for the responsibilities she had never fully anticipated. It was not concern disguised as worry anymore. It was raw, honest fear. She was no longer hiding behind polite phrases or rehearsed smiles. She was human vulnerable, and that vulnerability created the space for understanding. From that moment on, we began to rebuild our relationship slowly and deliberately. I learned how to assert my independence and protect my boundaries without wounding the person I loved. Claire, in turn, began to see me not as a problem to manage or an inconvenience, but as a living, thinking person with opinions, desires, and rights. It was a transformation for both of us, one that required patience, humility, and a willingness to listen. Over the next year, we developed a new rhythm. We held weekly check-ins, not about my finances or health, but about our lives. We talked about books we were reading, movies we had watched, and small everyday experiences that reminded us of the simple joys in life. These conversations, free from hidden agendas, gradually restored trust and connection. I discovered a renewed sense of closeness with Claire, a bond that was not built on obligation, but on respect and authentic communication. During this time, I also began to rediscover myself. I started dating again, taking cautious, joyful steps into a world I had long set aside. I explored new places, tried new activities, and reconnected with passions that had been dormant. Independence became not just a principle, but a lived reality, a daily affirmation that I could enjoy life on my terms without fear of judgment or interference. Claire and Michael, along with Patricia, gradually adjusted their approach. They learned to respect my autonomy, to involve me in decisions about my own life rather than dictating them. It was a subtle but powerful shift. Respecting someone's independence, they realized, did not diminish care, it enhanced it. And that lesson extended beyond our household, influencing how they approached relationships with others in their lives. Through this journey, I came to a profound realization. My worth is not defined by my assets, my productivity, or my daughter's approval. My value is inherent, rooted in the right to live fully, to make my own choices, and to be treated with dignity. True empowerment, I discovered, comes from recognizing one's own strength and asserting it with calm confidence, even when confronted with fear, misunderstanding, or generational expectations. By embracing my independence and fostering honest communication with Claire, we created a relationship that was more genuine than I had ever imagined. One built on trust, mutual respect, and the recognition that love does not mean controlling or managing another person's life. It means supporting them while honoring their autonomy. And in that understanding, I found both freedom and connection, a balance I had longed for but never truly believed possible. Looking back on everything that happened, I realize my story carries a few important lessons, ones I hope resonate with other women navigating the challenges of midlife and beyond. First, autonomy and independence are priceless. No one, not even the people we love most, has the right to manage our lives for us. It's easy to assume that family knows best, but true care is not control. Standing firm in your own decisions, even when it feels uncomfortable, is a form of self-respect that cannot be taken away. Second, observation and information are powerful tools. Taking the time to research, to gather facts, and to understand the reality of any situation is critical. My investigation into Meadowbrook Manor and my review of Mark's letter gave me the clarity I needed to confront Claire not with anger, but with reason and confidence. Knowledge protects us from manipulation and allows us to act decisively when our independence is at stake. Third, honest communication heals. Avoiding difficult conversations may seem easier in the moment, but it rarely resolves the underlying tension. By speaking openly with Claire about our fears, expectations, and feelings, we rebuilt our relationship on trust rather than obligation. We learned to see each other as full people, not just roles in each other's lives, and that mutual respect became the foundation for a stronger bond than either of us had experienced before. Finally, this story is meant to inspire women, especially those of us in midlife and beyond. It is never too late to assert your value, to reclaim your independence, and to craft a life that is both fulfilling and self-directed. We can embrace new experiences, explore our passions, and maintain meaningful relationships without surrendering our dignity or our choices. Life does not end at 67 or even 70. Every stage offers opportunities to grow, to protect ourselves, and to live fully. As for me, I am preparing for a trip to Ireland, not as someone being managed or monitored, but as Evelyn Harper, 67 years old, independent, strong, and living life on my own terms. I am excited to explore, to learn, and to continue creating my own adventures, unburdened by the need to meet anyone else's expectations. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it gives you the courage to stand up for yourself, to protect your choices, and to recognize your own worth. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and comment below with your thoughts or experiences. And don't forget to subscribe to Real Her Stories to hear more heartfelt, empowering, and inspiring stories of women who, like you, are navigating life with courage and dignity. Remember, your life is yours to live fully, boldly, and authentically, and that is a lesson worth sharing.